Welcome everybody, Dark Hour 717 here, and so you're thinking of getting into Star Citizen, or you're wanting to build a PC to get into Star Citizen, and curious as to what the minimum specifications are that you're going to need to do this. We're going to go over that today, and also build the new PC I'm doing for editing and streaming. So we'll get into this and get started, and welcome to the show. You guys are horrible! Okay, so if you're building your own PC or you're looking to upgrade your PC to the minimum specifications, there's a couple things to keep in mind here. There's a minimum specifications and there's a recommended. A large difference between the two, so keep that in mind because the minimum specs will get you into the game. Doesn't guarantee that you're going to be a successfully, consistently non-crashing.
Not going to be a great experience.
Yeah. Basically, your minimum specification is going to be Windows 8.1 or 10 with the latest service pack. It's going to want you to have a CPU that's going to be Intel Sandy Bridge or newer, or an AMD Bulldozer or newer, as well as DirectX 11 compatible graphics card with 3 GB minimum RAM on it, and then also 65 GB of storage space. Though for minimum specs, it don't specify SSD or HDD. Definitely SSD is going to be much better for you. So the recommended specs for Star Citizen are actually going to be the same with Windows 10 with the latest service pack, and also the same with the Sandy Bridge or the Bulldozer chips, but you also need to have 4 GB of RAM on your graphics card to get the best experience, and that's where they're going to step in and say that you need the 65 GB of storage in an SSD format, which definitely is going to benefit everybody. Running it on HDD, it's not going to run successfully. You're just going to frustrate yourself and get angry and throw something through a window. So those are going to be the specifications that are put out by Star Citizen. You can check them out on the RSI website. Link will be down below in the comments. Also keep in mind they do have the telemetry page where you can go in and you can upload your configuration and see where it falls on the graph as far as performance and what you should be experiencing. And you can also look at other people's builds to see what kind of frame rates they're getting, as well as performance. And we'll also put a link to the telemetry page in the comments below as well, and you can check that out to see where your system falls. So as I mentioned, we are building a new PC for editing and streaming capabilities for the YouTube channel and all that. Some of the things that you're going to need if you're going to do this is you're going to need a toolkit for PC repair. I use an iFixit kit, which is actually very good. Standard Phillips head screwdriver. Depending on what your cooler has or doesn't have, it may have pre-applied thermal paste. If not, you're going to need some thermal paste to put on your CPU, as well as some Velcro ties for cable management. Now in the system that we're building today, we're going to be using a Phanteks Eclipse P600S case, which will bring that out a little bit later. We've got the Auec Z590A gaming Wi-Fi motherboard. Got this one because it does support Gen 4 NVMe and has 3 slots for those. We're also going to be putting in 6 of the 140mm Thermaltake Pure Duo white RGB fans, as well as 64 GB of Trident Z Royal 4000 speed DDR4 memory. We also got a Phanteks Revolt Pro power supply, 1000 watts. It's a little overkill, but I'd rather go too big than too small. And we're also going to be doing the NZXT Kraken Z63 AIO 280mm with a LCD display in the cooling head. And also we're doing an Intel i9 11900K chip with a GeForce RTX 3070 graphics card, as well as a total of 12 GB of storage with 3 NVMe terabyte drives, 3 2.5-inch SSD drives, and also a 6 TB storage drive for archiving files that are just for storage. So we're going to get those all into the case and get into building that. We've got some RGB we're also going to be putting into it, which is just going to be your generic strips and addressable RGB. Alright, so we're going to get started here. We're going to start with the motherboard, and a couple of tools like I mentioned that you're going to want to make sure that you have is your PC micro driver kit, as well as you're going to need your thermal paste in case it's not pre-applied, and also a standard screwdriver. And a lot of people like wire ties. I can't stand wire ties. because if you ever have to change anything, they're a pain to get out. But for smaller wires, you can still use the small wire ties. Most of the time I use just the Velcro. One of the best options out there. The case we're going to be using also has a lot of built-in channels with Velcro already in it. So with the motherboard, you're going to open it up here and you're going to take the anti-static bag out with your motherboard. And yes, generally you want to be using an anti-static strap when you're doing this, though I've never really had an issue with it. And I'm working on a anti-static mat, so I'm going to risk it. And if you can get the box to cooperate, get out all your accessories here. All the cables, they even give you wire ties, motherboard screws, all the stupid little stickers they give you. And all that. Now, the Z590 Aorus board is 11th gen compatible already, though it does have the BIOS flashback button on the back of it, so that if we need to do a BIOS update before the post, we can do that. All I do is put the motherboard right onto the box, just as another measure to protect it. Alright, so we got the motherboard out of the bag finally. Alright, so there we go. We got that there, and we put that stuff off to the side. We got our Wi-Fi antenna. We'll put that off to the side. We won't need that or any of the other cables here for a little bit. So what we're going to start with is putting in your chip. We got the i9 11900K, and in the original fancy packaging. So you want to be careful with this because you really don't want to mess it up before you put it in. When you go to put this in, you're just going to lift up this little arm here. It's spring loaded, and lift up the door and take our chip out. I'm having a packaging issue today. Alright, so there we go. We got our chip here, and what you're going to look for is there is a little golden triangle right in the corner there, and on your motherboard there is a little triangle in the corner that goes in, and you're just going to set it right in there. Give it a little bit of a wiggle test, and then you're going to just pop this door back down. On the i9s, you gotta, or on the Intels, you got to pop it underneath that little bolt there. It's going to have a little pressure. This cover will come off. You want to make sure you save this cover in case you ever have to RMA this. They're going to want that cover back on there. So our chip is in place. And then after the chip, we're going to go ahead and put in our memory, and we've got the Trident G-Skill Z-Royal, and we've got 4 sticks of 16 gigabyte DDR4 4000 speed RAM. Now with this, you're going to want to match the notch up with the notch that's on the motherboard here. So it will only go in one way if you're only using 2 sticks. Most motherboards are going to be slot 2 and 4 going out from the CPU. I got 4 sticks, so we're going to fill all the slots. So you just open up these levers here. Some boards have levers on both sides. This one only has levers on one side. And then you're just going to go ahead and pop those in. It's so shiny. And it's just going to click right on down in there. And you want to always make sure you use 2 DIMMs of RAM so that you get the dual channel for your best performance. If you're going pre-owned, be aware that a lot of manufacturers such as Dell and all that only send stuff out in single channel memory, so a lot of times when you order it as 16 gigs or more, they still only put in a single stick. Alright, and of course the Trident Royal Z is also RGB enabled, which will definitely help with the aesthetics of the build, as this is going to be a all silver and white and black accent build. Get the last one in. Now I always start with the RAM because when you put on your CPU cooler or anything else like that, sometimes if you're using an air cooler or an AIO, it can get in the way of getting that last stick in, so you want to pop that in first when you can. So we got those in place. Now we're going to get our NVMe drives. We've got 3 slots on this board for NVMEs, and we're going to fill each one of those. I got terabyte, Gen 4, M.2 NVM drives, Sabrent Rockets, And all we're going to do is we are going to take these covers off and pop those in there. When you take these covers off, also be aware there could be thermal paste on the back side, and you're going to want to make sure you peel off that protective cover so that the thermal pad can make contact with the drive. That's number 2. Going?
Yep.
Okay. Alright, so we're going to take our NVMe and we are going to put this in each one of the slots, and then we are going to put the retention screw in to hold it in place. There we go. Alright, so that's in there now. Put the covers back on. You want to make sure that you remove the protective film from the thermal pad without ripping off the thermal pad like that. Okay, so we got the RAM and we got the NVMEs in. We're going to put this off to the side for right now, and we are going to get our case up here. A beast of a case. Alright, so this is the Eclipse P600S from Phanteks. This is actually a pretty freaking awesome case. So basically you got tempered glass on the one side, as well as the side door on the back. That all lifts right off. Set that over there. And as you can see, you got spots back here for 3 2.5mm SSD drives, lots of cable management. It also has a built-in fan controller up here to control everything right from the case. That comes part of it. And of course we got the full tempered glass on the other side. That is okay, so Cryo just made the catch of the century, catching the camera as it fell off the table. Does this mean you give up your producer credits?
No. You're the one that shifted the table.
The table shakes.
Yeah?
Alright, so the tempered side glass panel swings open. This also has quite a bit of soundproofing in it, as it does have 3 different modes you can actually go with: silent, ventilated, or full airflow. These actually removable covers on top come right off. And also we have the one cover on the front, has a flip up panel for the USB and such, and then this pops right off. You can leave it hanging like that for a little ventilated but silent operation, or completely remove it for your maximum airflow. Alright, it does come standard with 340mm fans, which we are not going to use because we are going to put our own fans in it. And actually, before we do that, we got to pop the top off here. Take these thumb screws off, and this is where our screwdriver comes in handy. From the factory, these are a little bit tight. And we're just going to pop the top off. Now this will accommodate a 360mm radiator or a 280mm radiator on the top, as well as a 360 or a 420mm on the front. So again, we're not going to use these fans, so we're just going to take these off of here. Alright, so with all the fans out, now we can work on getting the motherboard in. And basically this case has standoffs already in position for where our motherboard's going to sit, and just like with other motherboards, the center middle one has a post that helps you position where the motherboard is going. And you want to try and get the AIO in and then lay it down on that post and line up all your other screws. So we're just going to put it in here. Line that up. And just give it a little bit of a nudge and it's locked into place.
That's a lot of screws.
Phanteks gives you a nice case of all the screws you're going to need for anything that you're going to want to do with this case. Packed in there with our drive bays, so we're just going to open this up and get our motherboard screws out. Watch me open this and have it explode everywhere. Alright, so these should be our motherboard screws. Alright, and we are just going to go in and put our motherboard screws in. What?
Mother screw.
I didn't say mother screw.
You did.
I said motherboard screw.
No, you did not. You got 2 cameras.
Yeah.
And you're gonna lie?
Now, one thing to remember, if you're going to drop a screw anywhere in this process, it's going to be here because you'll get it lost on the PCB. I always recommend getting a kit that has magnetized bits so that it makes it a little simpler to get them in there. Alright, there we go. Our motherboard is in place. Alright, so after we got the motherboard in place, we are going to go ahead and set up the fans. So we're just going to stand this up again here while we get the fans. And what I'm using is a Thermaltake Pure Duo 14 RGB white, which comes with a whole mess of stuff. All the screws that you need. I think it's got an RGB controller in there too. Alright, so one thing to keep in mind with your fans is make sure you have your directional airflow going correctly. So if you, on most fans, you're going to find markings on the side as to which direction the airflow goes. Generally, the manufacturer tag is going to be facing out when you're trying to pull in, so it's going to go from that front side where the manufacturer tag is out the back where the rating tag is. Now also in your fans, you're going to get different size screws for depending on what you're using them for. You're going to get the short screws to attach to the front grille, top, and back. They will also include longer screws for attaching to a radiator. Check your radiator before you put those long screws in, because some of them you will want to make sure you put the screws in the right spot so you don't accidentally put it through the radiator trying to get into the fan and possibly puncture the radiator. It should go in from the fan into the radiator through the entire length of the fan. Alright, so next we're going to do the power supply then, because the AIO may block the power connection. On the P600 you actually have this nice bracket back here, which seems to be a common thing with a lot of newer cases. Some of the old ones still slip it in from the inside. We just take out the 2 thumb screws, open that up, and grab our Phanteks Revolt power supply. This is 1,000 watts, and this actually I got this because it was the wattage I wanted at the best cost and was available. It is set up to run a dual system, though that's not what I'm going to be doing here. It is 80 plus gold rated. And when you're getting a power supply, you really want to make sure you got that 80 plus certification. But even though it's set up for a dual system, we are perfectly fine running it in a single system, and it will actually work perfectly for us. Alright. So, in the box, what you got is the power supply itself here, and then of course this is fully modular. And you have all your modular cables for both power supply units, for your PCIe as well as your 24 pin and everything that you're going to need there. So nice thing is we can just use what we need, and then we can just save the rest off to the side if we ever need them in the future. So we're going to go ahead and put our power supply in here. We want to put this bracket onto the power supply first. Do we really? Do we need a full sheet of 1,000,000 stickers that all say ROG?
Yeah, otherwise you're just going to have a blank piece of glass.
I prefer the blank piece of glass. So there we go. We got our bracket onto our power supply, and as usual, right side up there, upside down here. So, oh no. Okay, forget that part, because they put it on two other directions on both sides, so I guess...
You put it with the fan facing the bottom of the case.
I know that, but then why do they print that upside down?
No. I'm telling them. It doesn't matter what way the words go. Put the fan facing down.
Alright, so we've got all the cables for the power supply unit, but we are actually going to use some sleeve cables for these. So we've got some sleeved white cables to go with our system. And we will use those to go through the motherboard to the back, and then we'll just connect those power supply cables to these sleeved extensions.
They look like they glow in the dark. Do they glow in the dark?
They don't glow in the dark.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. The 24 pin I got is an RGB 24 pin, so. Alright, so we need a 6-pin power. Alright, so we're going to take our 8-pin power here. And get it to stay together. Let that go. Alright. So we've got our 8 and 4-pin connector for CPU power attached. So now we should be good to go ahead and put on the AIO. So we've got the Kraken Z63 280mm AIO by NZXT. Now this also has a LCD display on the cooling head, which is customizable, which is one of the main reasons I got that. We got our brackets. We're not going to be using these stock fans that came with it, so we'll set those off to the side. Those, because we're going to put some of the thermal takes on it. Alright, so here we are with our AIO. And again, this is the Kraken Z63. And when you place this in your case, you want to make sure you have it in the correct configuration. Nice thing about the AIO, it's all pre-filled. There's no maintenance that's needed with it other than just cleaning the dust out. But when you put this in your case, you don't want the pump head above the radiator. And you want to make sure that any air bubbles are, it's positioned so any air bubbles get trapped in the reservoir. So you can mount it like this and you're fine. You can mount it like this, you're fine. You don't want to mount it like that because the pump is above the radiator. So just be careful how you position this. Now with this case, what we're going to do is we're going to attach the fans to the radiator on the underneath using the long screws and then using the short screws to attach the radiator to the case. So we're going to take this and just set it like that. Nice thing about this also, it has the pre-applied thermal paste, so we don't have to worry about that at all either. When you have something with pre-applied thermal paste, it's more than adequate amount. You don't have to add to it. You don't have to remove it and put your own on. My current system has been running almost 2 years now with the pre-applied thermal paste and has had no cooling issues. So you're perfectly fine to just leave it as is. And again, we're going to pay attention to which way we're pointing the fans on there, because we want to have it pull the air up through the radiator and out the case. And we also want to make sure that the cables again are towards the back of the PC. So it's going to be like this. So we want to make sure those cables are down there at the bottom. So we're going to attach the fan right like that. Alright, so that's all our fans on there, and now we're going to mount this inside the case. Alright, so that is in there now, and we're going to use the short screws just to put it into place in the case. Now with this being a 280 millimeter radiator, it gives us the ability to basically keep it from blocking that power cable, but we can slide it as far back or forward as we can, but probably best to keep that out in the open and free. So our AIO is in place, or the radiator is in place now, and we got the cables through the back, and time to attach the pump head. So you're going to want to get your bracket for the Intel. And you're going to have different things in here labeled for whether it's for AMD or whether it's for Intel. So what we're going to do is we are going to match up our bracket, which this one is the correct one. And we are going to put the motherboard bracket through the back of the case. And then we are going to take these standoffs that come with it and thread it right into that bracket. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the cover off of the pump head, and we are just going to line this up and put it right over those posts. Get it on there. There we go. And then we're going to use the thumb screws to tighten it down. Alright, so we got the thumb screws on for the AIO, and we have that in place. When you go to tighten this down, you want to make sure it's just snug. You don't want to over tighten it, and do it kind of like a car in an alternating pattern until they're all nice and snug. There we go. Alright, and then peel. If you can peel. There we go, peel. Alright, so we've got that in place. Now we're going to also set up our 24-pin cable, which we have an RGB extension for that. And that is going to be our RGB cable, which will tie back to the RGB controller, and we'll feed that through to there and put that through the back side. Alright, so we've got that all in place now. What we're going to do is next we are going to go ahead and set up our other power cables off our PSU. And we're going to need, we're not going to use the 24-pin sleeved extension because it won't be visible, but we're going to use the one for the power supply to go to that RGB That's in there. So we're going to go ahead and connect our 24 pin for the motherboard. Which is this end. Alright, so now that we've got the AIO in and we've got the cabling all connected, and make sure you always check your manual because it'll keep you from having to pull that out multiple times, as I speak from experience now. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw the graphics card in there right now. And this is our Gigabyte GeForce RTX 3070. I do not want to admit how much I overpaid for this, but it wasn't as bad as what some of them are.
Fingers crossed for you, buddy.
Yeah.
God, that is sweet looking though.
Isn't it? Fits the black and white aesthetic here. So we're going to go ahead and take out our PCIe slots. And this is going to take up 2. Now this case also does have the ability to mount this vertically with an adapter, which I'm not personally a huge fan of, but it does have the ability to do it if you're somebody that likes to do that. Me, I tend to feel it kind of kills the airflow with the fans right up against the glass. Alright, so we got that. Alright, click that into place there. Alright, so we got our graphics card in, and we are going to use our sleeve cables here for the connection, and we will connect those to the power supply cable in back there, and we'll get this all cable managed up. Probably helps if I put it in right. Alright, so basically at this point we've got everything installed. We still have to put our hard drives in, but those are going to go back on the back of the case on those holders, and one in the basement that's going to use just a regular SATA connection as well as the SATA power. And then we'll be pretty much all set. I'm going to go through, clean up these cables and get everything tidied up and back and wire up the fans through the fan controller that's in the back. Each one just has to be plugged into one port on one spot on the controller, and we will be all set to go from there. So I'm going to get this all cleaned up and managed, and then we'll be back to do a post on it and see how it goes. Okay, so we got all the cables managed, and we got everything all bundled up in the back.
at least as well as it can be. There's a lot of different things going on in there, so we're going to plug this thing in and see what we get. And then the big trick is to hook it up to a monitor, see if we get a post. Oh, turn the power supply on. And there we go. All the RGB is active. We have to do some setup on the Kraken so that that points in the right direction. But that is all good and going. And I would say that is a sign that it is done. So now the trick is to plug it into a monitor and let's see if we can get a post to BIOS and go from there. We've got a post. And let's see, it's seeing 7 of our drives. So we've got all of our M.2s, we got all our 2.5-inch drives, and we also have our 6 gig storage drive. Alright, so we're going to go into the setup. We want to make sure that we have the TPM set up. I'm sorry. Now we're going to go into the setup and we want to make sure that we have the XM key set up and make sure it sees everything it's supposed to see, including our memory. BIOS is good. Alright, so it's detecting all the fans. Alright, so we're going to set up Windows here and we are going to get this thing finished and set up, get all the software on there, update all the items that are on it, and we're going to go from there. And then we'll be playing Star Citizen on this. So hopefully you've learned something from this, nightmare of a video. Apologize it's not up to par with some of the bigger tech people, but at least hopefully everybody learned something. And don't forget to leave a comment and also hit that like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. I'm going to set this bad boy up.